15 years ago, a hyperspace gate appeared in the middle of the Pacific. Beyond the gate existed a bizarre, unfamiliar world of monsters and fairies. The city of San Teresa became home to over 2 million of these outsiders, a mixture of different races, diverse cultures, haves and have-nots. But in the shadow of all this mayhem, in the world's largest city of dreams lurked countless crimes like drugs, prostitution, human trafficking, and weapons smuggling. Since after its establishment, the Department of San Teresa Metropolitan Police and its most diligent cop, Kei Matoba, have been on the run to catch the culprits committing these heinous crimes, aliens and humans alike. Sitting in a car parked on the side of a deserted alleyway, undercover officer Sergeant Kei Matoba discusses his latest love interest with partner Rick Fury, as they seem to expect some visitors. Soon after, two men dressed casually emerge from the shadows of the street and approach their car. Kei and Rick, pretending to make a deal, grab the abducted fairy they have been intending to recover and attack the men, drug traffickers, just when they least expect it. In a matter of seconds, one of the two men, an alien, charges at Rick, gets hold of him and kills him by twisting his neck. Kei attempts to get back at the Farbani alien, but he escapes on foot with a fairy. With the death of Rick, his friend and partner of 4 years, Kei is set on delivering sweet revenge on the original killers. On the police chief, Jack Roth's orders, Kei receives Tilarna Exedilica, a fairy noble from the Farbani kingdom, as she embarks off her royal ship into the human world. Being one of the knights of Mirvor, Tilarna's duty is to rescue the noble fairy Kei ran into in his last case. As he makes his way out of the police headquarters accompanying Tilarna, Kei receives a call and is informed that the fairy was actually stolen from a Mexican gang in a ridgeline. He then heads to a bar to meet O'Neill, a thief and one of his informants, to get a lead on the Mexican gang. Subsequently, following the lead, Kei and Tilarna enter a building. As they take the elevator to the upper floor, Tilarna senses a peculiar smell. The smell of Latena, a vicious odor indicating that an enemy entity is nearby. Armed and steady, they step out of the elevator to face the supposed target. Fighting ensues as Kei and Tilarna come to blows with the men on the other side of the elevator. Taking one of the men down, Kei hunts down his counterpart, a living corpse. Tilarna, meanwhile, does not shy away from using her fairy powers either, and comes face to face with the corpse, slicing him in two using her sword. Kei questions this act of hers, to which she explains that the corpse would not have been of much use as he was devoured by an evil Latena, and being magically controlled. However, Kei gets skeptical of Tilarna's intentions, figuring she may as well have been sent to clear the enemy's tracks. After having pointing swords and guns at each other, however, they dismiss their arguments at last. Subsequently, the autopsy report results of both the corpses. The one who killed Rick and the other taken down by Tilarna happen to be interestingly similar. Tilarna explains that they would ingest a Semenian drug made of fairies on a daily basis that turned them into dead men, and after their deaths, their corpses were controlled with specific cultist spells. The scene shifts to a dark night. Two parties meet to make a deal on what appears to be a ship deck. A handsome young guy named Elbaji meets up with a middle-aged man, Karim, who walks up to him offering a briefcase filled with money. Elbaji signals one of his men, who takes up the briefcase. He then calls out a name, Zalada, and right then a man dressed in a cloak steps out of his car. Elbaji introduces Zalada as the greatest wizard in the world in terms of controlling the dead. Zalada further explains how his magic can only work on people frequently using fairy dust and never what he calls pure souls. Zalada then presents the prototype of a fairy bomb that can be used to make puppet corpses. On the way back from Rick's funeral, Kei and Tilarna are informed of a missing patrol car. They find two police corpses smelling of a fairy dust. After Tilarna confirms the presence of fairy dust on the bodies and deduces that gold is necessary to serve as a catalyst due to its high concentration, she specifies that the gold must be shaped in a precise manner that is challenging for most craftsmen. Kei resolves to seek out individuals who have recently acquired specific manufacturing equipment and discovers that club owner Dennis Elbaji had done so through a front company. Despite Kei's advice to establish a firm legal case, Tilarna decides to pursue Elbaji independently, leaving Kei behind with her sword. Kei makes a discovery that Tilarna has deliberately left her sword behind to signal her willingness to flout regulations and go after Dennis Elbaji. With O'Neill's assistance, Tilarna, wearing a pretty short dress and heels that she barely walks straight in, sneaks into Dennis's nightclub. Dennis walks up and tries to hit on her, but Tilarna stays put and does not seem to care. She then confronts him in an attempt to retrieve the kidnapped fairy. Unfortunately, Dennis manages to defeat her in a sword fight and takes her as captive, transporting her to an abandoned temple on the outskirts of San Teresa. There, they are received by Zelada and Karim. They inquire about Tilarna. Dennis introduces her as the Knight of Mirvor. Kei watches over from a distance, but when Tilarna uses her magical power to escape, he disregards his orders to wait for a SWAT team and rushes in alone. Tilarna discovers a chamber filled with numerous fairies. fairies, all being exploited to create fairy dust. Dennis rants about his preference for the American dream over the noble existence he was meant to lead on their home planet. Then re-engages Tilarna in a sword fight. Kay intervenes by throwing Tilarna her sword, allowing her to overpower Dennis and deliver a fatal blow. However, Tilarna realizes that the fairy in question is not the one Dennis had taken, and she and Kay go in search of it. Kay catches Zelada before he can flee, but Jack Roth appears and shoots Tilarna before holding Kay at gunpoint. Jack confesses to being the traitor who had been covertly aiding Zelada, hoping to instigate a war between humans and Semanians by using the fairy bomb. Before Jack can shoot Kay, Tilarna miraculously rises to her feet, giving Kay just enough time to shoot Jack dead. Tilarna reveals that Jack's bullet had hit her sword's hilt just as he commandeers a car to take them back to the city. They race to a skyscraper called Frost Tower, evading Zelada's traps, where Tilarna finally spots the fairy on the roof, where it's tied to a ticking time bomb. Kay makes an effort to defuse the fairy bomb, but unfortunately, Zelada's magic strikes him down fatally. However, using his own senses, Kay manages to locate Zelada and shoot him. This action helps Tilarna cut off Zelada's arm before he escapes. With the bomb ticking, the fairy decides to sacrifice herself and uses magic to heal Kay before dying. As a result, the bomb does not explode since it requires a living fairy to activate. After the incident, Tilarna returns home while Kay resumes his normal life. However, Tilarna surprises him by announcing that the San Teresa MPD hired her as a detective to track down Zelada and other criminals. During their first joint operation, she cuts off a suspect's finger while storming a house, much to the annoyance of the new chief. After arresting the suspects, the police discover a coffin with a mummified Semanian woman in the suspect's garage. Cecil, the forensic scientist and Kay's ex, examines the coffin, while Tilarna interrogates the suspects harshly. One of them confesses to stealing the coffin, hoping to sell it for a large sum of money. Just then, Tilarna rushes to the medical examiner's office, where Cecil's assistant is being attacked by a supposedly dead woman. Tilarna fights and refers to her as a vampire, while struggling to defeat her. Tilarna and Kay are successful in rescuing Cecil, Kay's ex, and the forensic scientist who carried out the autopsies of the corpses earlier, and severing the vampire's arm, but the vampire manages to escape into the city. The police responds by deploying K9 units and SWAT teams to capture the vampire, while the new chief inspector defends Tilarna against an angry superintendent. Tilarna explains to Kay that the shriveled up corpse that turned into a hot naked girl was Loden Naven, who happens to possess strong and quite terrifying regenerative powers. She further explains that they use the power humans use to live and revive. They then follow the vampire's trail to a closed shopping mall, where the vampire begins to attack again, throwing Kay into a fountain on a lower floor and rendering Tilarna unconscious. The vampire holds Tilarna captive and questions her about the world she has entered, which might be connected to a gate mentioned in the Book of Neba. Kay and a SWAT team arrive just in time, using IR goggles to locate and shoot the vampire. However, the vampire manages to escape with the assistance of Zelada, who directs her to an underground passage. The vampire refuses to give Zelada the Book of Neba, instead drinks the blood of a salaryman Zelada contacts to regenerate herself. Kay and Tilarna track down the vampire once more in a subway tunnel, where Kay shoots her multiple times, but is unable to take her down. Her strength stuns Kay, who keeps trying to take her down with his 9mm bullets. The vampire then gets hold of Kay and pins him down as a train approaches, but Tilarna manages to free him just in time as the train runs over the vampire, effectively preventing her from regenerating. Kay wakes up to his cat, Kuroi, sitting on his face. Being allergic to cats, he yells out Tilarna's name and calls her out. She then explains to him how she fixed his allergy over a month ago using an extra elixir of life she had been carrying. Later, Kay's car is hit by a speeding truck, prompting him to pursue the truck but find no driver. Just a large quantity of porn magazines strewn across the road. While Tilarna attempts to move Kay's car, she accidentally leaves it in the path of another truck, causing it to be destroyed. The chief orders Kay to investigate the theft of the truck filled with porn magazines and instructs Tilarna to obtain a driver's license. Kay recruits 2 other vice detectives to assist in the operation against the porn smuggler, while Tilarna is introduced to pornography for the first time. Detective Tony McBee and his partner disguise themselves and go to O'Neill's club to meet the smuggler, a young Semanian named Gavin who plans to sell the porn magazines to Semanian nobles who lack the technology to produce them in their world. Kay receives a red sports car from the chief, and Tilarna practices driving with Cecil. On the day of the bus, Tony arranges to meet Gavin, but Gavin's partner betrays them and holds Tony hostage while Kay is temporarily blinded by gunfire. The suspect flees and Tilarna takes over Kay's new car, going after the suspect's vehicle and crashing into it. Later that evening, Kay returns home to discover that Tilarna has decorated an entire room of his house for herself. The end for now. Subscribe if you want part 2. Thanks for watching. If you like this recap, please consider to like and subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell to be notified of any new recaps. And while you're at it, check out this new anime anime recap appearing on the screen.